You are listening to Country Pocket on WUSB. Today we have Lindsay Lou on the show. Hey, Lindsay.
Hi.
I really do like the outfit. The shirt is exactly like something I would wear. I
This
love,
the mushroom patch flannel.
absolutely. The glasses are like nothing I would ever wear.
But they match your shirt, so.
They do. They do. Um, the new EP is called You Thought You Knew, and Lindsay's going to be performing with Sierra Hull at the Mercury Lounge. That's in New York City, downtown, 7 p.m. on September 22nd. That is this Thursday. The first song off the EP you just heard is called Still Water. Lindsay, do you think that the personalities of people are, you know, sort of as different and immutable as elements of nature itself?
Well, I think that, I guess your question is about personalities and not people themselves. But people themselves, I think it's more realistic and accurate to talk about people as part of nature than separate from nature. When we're talking about personalities, Um, I think that personalities are an expression or a manifestation of the ego, which is just a way of responding from our essence to the world. So, at our core, at our essence, we are unchangeable, immutable, the same as nature, part of nature. Um, we're something, sort of beyond uh, I have a belief in a sort of dualistic way of thinking about, people and souls. Um, so I think that on the soul level, we are unchangeable and immutable, but on the personality level, um, no, I don't think that that's the case. I think that we have tendencies. We have these sort of coping mechanisms, um, and we have comfort zones, and we have familiar ways of being, but I don't think that we are immutable. Um, I think that we have no choice but to be constantly changing, and we'll
I,
always have like a sense of an unchangeable part of us that is our essential selves, that is a sort of part of this oneness. But on the personality level, you know, I don't know, and maybe it's changes very slowly or in ways that aren't immediately noticeable, um, or maybe it doesn't change very much, but we can certainly change our behavior, which is an expression of our personality.
yeah, I heard the song and I thought, I can make my body still, I can make my schedule still, but the inside of my head is always going to be a whitewater rapid. Um, do you consider yourself to be more of a Stillwater or rushing river type?
I'm definitely more of the rushing river white water type, and I was really thinking of this imagery of uh, a part in the river, in the Pisgah National Forest near the Sliding Rock, where we had pulled over, me and the band I was touring with pulled over and took a little dip at the river, and I just sat at the very top of some rapids, and there's something really beautiful and symphonic about it, and it also is very intense, so I was feeling a familiarity with that, and relating that intensity to the intensity of my inner discourse, like you're saying. Um, but I think that there are, like we're talking about, I think that there are practices that can slow that narrative down, quiet that voice, in a really gentle and healthy way that does give you some peace, And I've been in relationships with people that did seem like still water to me. And you never really know what's in someone's heart or mind, but I always felt a little bit envious of that, you know, that seems to even be a possibility, but also inspired by it. And I'm really inspired by things like, you know, the Lao Tzu, the being in harmony with the Tao, and just practicing meditation. I had my friend May Earlywine's dad has been studying Zen Buddhism for most of his life. And I went to one of his workshops at a festival here in Michigan, where I happen to be right now, um, where he was talking about meditation. And he said, you know, and this is a man is probably in his 70s at this point, and talking about an entire lifetime of really diving very deeply into this study and spending time in Tibet and being connected with Buddhist monks that he, you know, brings to the States and brings to festivals. And he sort of narrowed it down to um, meditation. He narrowed meditation down to a connection with the breath, you know. And I've listened to a lot of different podcasts and audiobooks and about meditation, and this seems to be what everybody is saying. There's a lot of different ways to meditate, but at its core, it's just connecting with the breath. And so he said, you can meditate as like as a constant practice. You don't necessarily have to have you know, the rug with the pillow and the singing bowl and the calming music or silence and, you know, sitting Indian style. A meditation can be as simple as in moments of where that those the white water gets even louder, or you know, sometimes I have this thing that happens to me where if I'm really triggered um, or set off with anger, I'll get like a flash of blindness, you know. And if I'm feeling, or if I can't sleep and I'm just spinning so hard, or if I'm in a conversation with somebody who has said something that, you know, triggers me, in all of these situations, I can just go back to my breath and remember that yes, I have this mind that's spinning out, but I'm also just this body. I'm just this bag of meat that is breathing. And what an incredible thing that is, that I'm breathing, you know? And to just pay attention to that, it sort of it brings things back into perspective, and it helps I think it just helps bring you back. So, and I think that that's these practices that have been being worked on and being taught for millennia are so helpful and give hope to the idea that I think that we all sort of inherently have, that we are immutable, that we are sort of stuck with these personalities or with whatever we're working with. That there are practices, you know, and that's what it is. It's not a solution, it's not a cure, it's a practice. And if you connect with that practice, um, I do find that even though I have a tendency to be able to connect and feel familiar about the idea of the rushing water, that there are things that I can do. There are things that I can work into my behavior, into my habits, that give me little glimpses of that peace and what it would feel like to be still water. Um, so, you know, I'm very curious and um, I don't know if enamored is the right word, but uh, I'm very interested in the paradox, and just the idea of the paradox, and just being okay with the paradox. You know, that we can be these two things at once. We can be this rushing rapid, and we can also be somebody who's capable of finding that peace. Um, so yeah, thanks for asking all of that. That song means a lot to me, and you know, it can mean as much as that, or it cannot. And that's the beauty of music, is that it doesn't have to be any particular thing to the listener. Once it's been written and once it's been shared, it has a life of its own, um, and that's something that I love about music.
Next up, I want to talk about ancient oceans. On the topic of everything changes, You say everything changes when it needs to. I look at so many changes going on in the world, and they make my head turn into the Whitewater Rapids. Tell me about the change in your life regarding where you live, and if you were quite ready for that change.
Um, I didn't think that I was, and this was I sort of pried from my house on Petway on two different occasions, and both on both occasions I was pretty resolutely not ready, and I communicated it, and I was pretty clear to everybody around me that I was not ready. Um, but once I found the spot where I was going, a, a flip switched, and I felt like I did feel that readiness. And once I made the move and returned, because my friend stayed on Petway, which is what allowed me to go back to it a second time. But when I moved, I remember sitting on my new porch and then going back to Petway to visit and and feeling like, yeah, this isn't my house anymore. You know, I didn't think that I would ever feel that. I thought that I would always feel sort of remorse for my separation from it because I spent so much time on that porch and had so many um, life changing experiences and connections made there. But when it's time, I really do believe that. And it's just part of that, that trust. Um, I do believe that. Like I said, when I was writing about this record to share with press um, around its release, I had not found a place to move yet. So I was my eye was twitching like crazy for like a month. It was insane.
My
Um,
neck twitches when I'm nervous.
yeah, it's the nervous system is really something to behold. But once I found the place that was the place that we were going to move to, I mean, literally my eye stopped twitching. That it was twitching every day for an entire month. We found a spot, and the next day my eye was no longer twitching. It's a marvel. Um, So once I found that place, the same thing happened. I felt ready. I felt ready and I felt grateful for the place that I had to go. But until I had that vision and that idea and that knowing that there was a place for me, because I've spent periods of time without a home base, just kind of touring so much that I put all of my belongings in the storage unit and I didn't have a home base. And I was sort of faced with this idea that maybe this was going to happen to me again, and I was going to be the first time it happened by choice. This time it was just going to be the nature of a totally insane housing market all over, and seemingly, especially in Nashville. It just seemed impossible to find a place to go. There's like 100 people applying for every place, and many of them, have a W-2 sort of job. You know what I mean? I'm not some vagabond artist that's hoping for some, somebody who values art to to believe me that, I haven't missed a rent payment since I was in college. And that was only because I forgot sometimes because I was in college, it's a different time. um, but uh, yeah, once I found it, anyway, just to get back to the point, I did feel ready. And and I felt happy, and I'm so happy now. I'm so grateful for the place that we have. We have it's like 1 acre in a part of town that feels really rural, but is really close to everything. Um, and there's like a nice pull through driveway, so it's easy in and out, and it's great. I do believe that's hard to believe it. It's hard to trust it when you feel insecure about anything. The housing insecurity is one of the worst things. Um, it's like one of the things that my grandma devoted her entire life to, and is such a predicament that if I have any hope for humanity, it's that we figure out a way to get to the bottom of this. Just the nature of housing insecurity. I mean, we've done so much. This seems like we can figure this out, but it's going to take everybody. It's going to take everybody, and it's going to take, the hardest thing is every one person thinking, though, I can't do it. And has to be a systemic thing. So it's like somebody has to do it. You know, it's like how to get around that way of thinking so that all of us are doing it. All of us are addressing this issue and getting to the bottom of it. Anyway, I went off track a little bit, but I do think that everything changes when it needs to. And it's hard to, I'll say again, it's really hard to trust that when it feels like, well, now it needs to change now, right? Like how can you trust that it's going to change? Like you have to do something. And that is true. This is part of the paradox. You have to do something, you have to trust it, and you have to, you know, there's so much paradox. It's really the people who I've had people who know me get uh, frustrated with my, just sort of resting in the paradox. But I don't know what else to do. It's like the Tao of practice of non-action, and then the importance of action. All of it.
Everything changes when it needs to. Does that include the sound of your music?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The thing is, there is a part of my music that is absolutely a piece of my essential self that is unchanging. If you listen to any of my music, you'll say, you can tell oh yeah, that's Lindsay Lou. Right. And I feel so much peace in that and knowing that. Right. Because, I was a punk rocker, and I still feel a connection with a lot of, like the punk manifesto, some punk rock ideology. And part of that was, you fall in love with a band and you fall in love with the way they sound. And there's something really raw about the way they sound. And if they like get more polished or get more produced or something, it's like you feel such disappointment that this thing that you loved has changed. I hate that. Who doesn't hate that? Right. The thing is, anyone who is my true fan, and I found this even with artists who I would feel an initial backlash towards when they released a record that maybe sounded more polished or maybe sounded, like it had changed in some ways. Like you always, if you were, love is, if it was love, it doesn't change, or else it was never love at all. And so if you love an artist, even if something about what they're doing changes, you will see and you will feel and you will still be able to connect with something in there that is still them. And but maybe you've changed and you no longer feel connected to that for a period of time. And another beautiful thing about music is sometimes you'll go back to it years later and realize that, oh yeah, the essential thing in me that connected to the essential thing in that was an extension of the essential thing in the person who made it is still there. I just needed to go through something, some part of my journey that could bring me back here, like um, like what is that, the alchemist who has that journey, and the Siddhartha and the hero's journey. It's like you need to go through something that puts you in a position to say, well, I don't like that anymore because, that sold out, or that changed. That ain't bluegrass, or whatever it is. I'm way more interested in, recognizing the beauty in things, the beauty in something's essence, than I am about, worrying over, um, something as superficial as genre, which isn't even really a thing. There is no such thing as genre. It's an approximation of a thing so that we have a way of talking about something that is not even talk aboutable, I mean, every artist is its own genre. it's constantly and it's changing as rapidly as that artist is changing. So um you know, I appreciate you coming out on this runaround with me, because I just think it's fun to look at at the truth, or what you connect with as the truth, from as many angles as possible.
Let's hear Ancient Oceans, and we will be right back.